Welcome to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good pal, contrary to what he tells people, Ty Franck.
Hey, man. So I guess we're supposed to talk about episode 108 of the show?
Yes, season 1, episode 8, which this is written by our dear friend and one of the most fun people to work with, Robin Veith.
Oh, is 108 Robin? Yeah, Robin's great. We definitely at some point need to have Robin come hang out with us.
I know. This would have been a good opportunity to do that. What's interesting about this episode is it's not my favorite episode. Not a lot happens on this episode, but it has two of my most favorite sequences of The Expanse on this episode. So it's kind of unique in that way.
We do have the big shootout.
We got the big shootout, and we got that one of the closest so far that The Expanse came to a horror movie. We got the monster in the house sequence when they find that stealth ship on the asteroid and they go in.
Yeah.
Which is going to tie into our movie conversation at the end of the show, at the end of the podcast. Do you have any fun things that besides The Expanse and dailies and writing books and having a wife and a fortress up in Northern California? Do you have anything that?
I don't live in California.
Oh, where do you live?
You want to know the only person who has actually come visit me at my new house. Now it's in the age of COVID, so of course nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
The only person who's come to my house is Kara.
Yeah. As soon as COVID is gone, as soon as COVID is not a thing anymore, I'm going to come stay with you for a couple months.
All right.
Bring the family and everything. Is that cool?
Yeah. Your kids can chase deer around in my backyard.
So something cool that I saw last night on Flow Grappling, which is a grappling website, there was Gordon Ryan had a match, and Gordon Ryan is, for those who don't know, probably the best grappler right now. I think he's like 36-0 or something like that. He's a phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner, and he has a rivalry. So he trained with John Danaher. John Danaher is the Death Squad in New York. They came out of Henzo's gym, and so John Danaher and them, they now live in Puerto Rico. And I'm just giving a little background context. So they have a rivalry with Atos, which is run by Andre Galval. And so Andre Galval is like, last night was the reason I want to talk about today is because it was an abnormal event that happened in a regular jiu-jitsu grappling match. So Andrew Galval is one of the most accomplished jiu-jitsu practitioners in jiu-jitsu history, and his team is one of the most accomplished team. They have champions with gi and no gi. He himself has been a champion with gi and no gi. He is one of the great trainers of the sport and one of the most respected of the sport. And an interesting thing with jiu-jitsu is there is that old school samurai spiritual, like you use martial arts, you use jiu-jitsu as a path to enlightenment, as to become a better person. But it has been kind of hijacked by the Conor McGregor mindset, or like the MMA of like, we just want, or Mayweather of boxing, like we just want to put on a show and we want to get as many eyeballs as possible. We want to make as much money as possible. And sometimes that has to operate on the lowest frequency. So one of Danaher's students, and Gordon, who also works with, had a fight. After the fight was over, Gordon was on the side. He was coaching as he was doing it. So after the fight was over, Gordon walked over to Altos and to shake hands with all their coaches. And I think that there is that mindset of Gordon of like, I'm going to do what I got to do to make a show and to make money. But at the end of the day, we're still martial artists. I'm going to shake your hand at the end of the fight, and then we'll just continue and do business as well. So he walks across the mat. He goes over to shake Galval's hand, and Galval doesn't shake his hand, and he flips him the bird and he says, "Fuck you." And Gordon kind of laughs and was like, okay, all right, and then he goes down and shakes everybody's hand. But you see that, and it's kind of sad because, Andre has such respect, and he's got this elevated status within the community. He's accomplished so much. And to see mentally that somebody, that operates a little bit on the lower frequency, that's trying to get eyeballs, trying to make money, got to him. And so, you see that and you're a little bit like, So Gordon goes walking out, and he has to give his post-fight interview, and he goes walking out, and it's a big hotel area room, and he has to walk through this like big ballroom there's no lights or whatever, it's dark, to get to and the camera's following him. Well, Andre Galval is in there on the phone. He didn't shake his hand, said, fuck you. Gordon laughed and then went to walk. Andre is there on his phone and he's following him and he's calling him names or whatever. And then he's saying, and then he says to him, why are you running? And then Gordon stops. He turns around and he goes, I'm not fucking running. And then he comes back at him. And these are two of like the deadliest people on the fucking planet. Like, and it just shows you how when emotion gets involved, it's like it always goes back to the street. It always goes back to the animal kingdom. And so Gordon goes to approach him and they just fucking collide off each other. Like they just fucking, cause it's almost like they didn't really want to take each other down or commit, but they just fucking kind of collide off each other and they bounce off. And Gordon Ryan slaps the shit out of Andre Gaval, like, slaps the shit out of him. And you're watching this and it's a cross between being fascinated on a psychological perspective of like what's happening. And then it's a little bit sad because you're like high mark warriors that you've always respected and studied and they've always, embodied this like, code of what martial arts is for. So he slaps the shit out of him. And Andre's trying to walk that path of taking the high road, but then jumping in the low road and going. So he's like, why would you do something? And then he talks shit and then Gordon turns around and slaps the shit out of him again. And these are people that like literally Gordon just broke a dude's arm in the match before, literally broke the guy's arm. And and they're bumping chests and slapping each other. So he walks out. He goes and sits down in the interview. It turns out his thing, and Andre is saying, you don't have any respect. You don't, you're a new guy coming in. You're not respecting any of the elders. And he's saying, fuck you. I will fuck you up in front of all these people. And I couldn't it was so fascinating. I probably watched the video like 4 or 5 times. I thought it was so interesting. And the entertainment value is so high. But the conflict is like, it's not what jiu-jitsu or the grappling, it's not what that is. And it's operating on a lower frequency when you usually go to jiu-jitsu matches, the respect, the shaking of the hands, the going back and forth. And it's probably why it's not as well known of a sport. And, not a lot of people pay as much attention to it because it's so, operating on a different frequency. So you're kind of that conflict of like, well, I get what Gordon's doing because he's getting eyeballs and this is his living, he's making money. And I get what Andre's saying because he's coming in disrespecting. But, so it's vacillating between all these different frequencies of tradition and culture and maturity and also like the path to martial arts, using martial arts to enlightenment. But then just, one name call and just jumping right back in that lower frequency. So, the whole thing was really interesting. It was an interesting thing to watch and it's something that I'm, trying to make sense of like, my God, it was so entertaining and so fun to watch. But then it's like, well, why is that? Because there's a little bit of undercurrent of sadness in it. Because it's not WWF, it's not MMA. And MMA started out as that. And then it kind of, and it's all fun to watch. But so yeah, that's what I watched last night. So that's my new thing to talk about. Kind of a long story, but what about you, man? You got anything new?
Well, I'm a little worried now that if you ever feel like I'm not respecting my elders, you're just going to walk up and slap me.
Well, I mean, that's a given. That's an absolute given.
No, I got a screener of Promising Young Woman and watched that.
Ooh,
and
let's talk about that. What did you think about that?
Here, I don't want to talk about the movie because it's just out, and I don't want to spoil anything for people who want to see it or whatever. But the thing I will talk about is the main character's father is played by our friend Clancy Brown.
Yes.
And I was talking about this a little bit on Twitter that I love Clancy, and Clancy's a great actor and he can play whatever he wants. I've seen Clancy do every kind of role and he's always great. He's just got such great presence. But I bonded with Clancy as a younger fellow from Highlander. And so the real Clancy Brown in my head is the Kurgan. So I'm watching Promising Young Woman. And Clancy's sitting there at the dinner table talking to the main character. And I'm just waiting for him to yank out a sword and fuck some dudes up. Like the whole time. And he's playing like the nicest guy. Like he's playing the most supportive, awesome dad ever. Like the kind of dad everybody wishes they had. And some part of my brain is still going, when is he going to jack some dudes up? It's Clancy. He needs to go fuck these dudes up. Because, part of it is that there's some douchey guys in this girl's world. And I'm just waiting for him to show up at the bar with these douchey guys and just wreck the place, right?
Yeah.
And he never does because, that's not what the movie's about.
Right.
But it's funny how when you bond with an actor in a certain kind of role, even though that actor has the chops to play a lot of other roles, there's a part of your brain that just wants them to be that guy again. You know, you watch Harrison Ford movies, you want him to be Han Solo.
Yeah.
In everything. And when he's a great actor, so he can play whatever he wants, but you watch him in a movie where he's not Han Solo, and it's kind of disconcerting. Like,
yeah,
he's not just shooting that dude with his blaster. Why is he arguing?
Like, you watch Regarding Henry, and you're like, come on, Indy, you got this shit. You'll check this. It's really hard to kind of do that. But, you know, with me, with Clancy Brown, I felt the same way. You see him at the dinner table, and not only Highlander, but also in Shawshank Redemption, he was this ruthless fucking cop. And he was, I mean, it's, you know, one of his great, he was so good in that. He might have got nominated for that, but he was so great and such a powerful performance. When you see him now in other things, you're exactly right. He's at the dinner table and you're like, don't get too close. Or she's giving him a hug and you're like, wait, does he care about her, or is he, you know, like, what's happening here?
Well, no, the thing that threw me is because, you know, like the thing of the movie is she's dealing with these douchey guys. Every time she was dealing with the douchey guys, I was just waiting for Clancy to show up. Like, are you fucking with my daughter? And then he's just wrecking guys, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they're
just like plowing through the bar and just leaving a wake of bodies behind him, right?
Yeah.
That's what I keep waiting to happen. And of course, the movie's not about that, so that's not what happens.
But that's a movie I would pay to see.
You know, if Clancy Brown has a daughter, don't start some shit with that girl.
No,
like, you just like, I would be terrified.
Right. So let's jump into season 1, episode 8. You know, again, I said earlier, but I'll repeat it. One of the things that was interesting about this episode is it's not my favorite episode. Not a lot happens in this episode, but it has 2 of my favorite sequences in the Expanse history. And we'll start with Miller. So Miller is on a belt transit. He's on his way to Eros. He happens to be sitting next to a Mormon. And they start to have this conversation, which is essentially about faith. And, you know, faith, in my opinion, or the way I see it, is a strong... one of the strong themes that runs through the Expanse. And it's not necessarily, it's faith in all its forms. And it's not necessarily, when people hear the word faith, they equate it to a religious type of faith. But everybody has faith. You have faith in your wife. You have faith that you wake up and you go to work and you'll make money. That money is just a representative of that money's backed up by the government. So you have faith that money will be able, or you have faith that if I work hard enough and make enough money, then I'll have safety. I will be able to provide for my family. So there's always this thing within us, this guide star, this thing that we believe in, whether subconscious or unconscious, that motivates us forward. It gives us the drive of whatever that thing is. And so in my opinion, and I could be just over, you know, you might have a completely different reason for creating this conversation. But when the Mormon was explaining what his faith was and how it was the thing that moves them forward within the present moment. It's the ultimate guide star. It's the thing that they're moving towards. And I think Miller starts to connect the dots that this is what Julie Mao is for him. And, you know, so I thought this was a really interesting, on a philosophical level, and also on like a main thematic level, which is a strong one within the Expanse. I thought this was a really interesting conversation. And whenever an actor is approaching to play a character, if you really want to start to hook in, the first thing you have to figure out is what do they want? What do they have faith in? What do they think their ultimate, where, you know, if it's safety, like what is the thing that they think is going to make them safe? If it's money, like, so once you kind of hook into the thing that's really guiding them, that's really pulling them, that is the guide star that now connects to every scene. A lot of times it's not as tangible, or it's not as, you know, upfront as like having the Julie Mao as the guide star thing. Sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's all, but you always got to find that thing that you got to find the faith, you know, what that faith is within a character's life. And so do you want to talk a little bit about that conversation he had with the Mormon, and what's up with Mormons, dude?
Well, so in the books, really the only Mormon presence is the big ship, the Nauvoo, right? And I've talked a little bit before about why we chose the Mormons to have the colony ship. But Narain, our showrunner, Narain Shankar, he just fell in love with this idea of like religions in the future. And because we already had Mormons, like he just kept trying to put Mormons in like every scene. I'm not sure why that was, but that was, you know, he's the showrunner, he gets to do what he wants.
I think Narain is from Utah. He's not. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
He's from upstate New York, which is like New York.
I know. I was just kidding. He has a secret history that we don't know about. Maybe he's trying to save all. Maybe he's a Mormon and he wants to save our souls.
I've hung out with Narain, and he drinks an awful lot of wine and coffee for a Mormon. But the conversation about faith is an interesting one, because as a person who was once very religious and who is now not religious at all, I would say that I personally don't have faith in anything. I have beliefs about things. I think there are things that I think are true about the world and things that I think are not true about the world. But I try very hard not to have any beliefs that are founded on nothing, which is what I think faith is. Faith is choosing to believe in something even though there's no evidence for it. But having said that, the thing you said about as an actor, you have to find the thing that the character wants so you can lock into them. As a writer, the 3 rules to writing characters are: every character must want something, every character must try to get that thing that they want, and every character must meet obstacles in getting the thing that they want. Those are the 3 things to writing a good character. A character who doesn't want anything is boring. They're super uninteresting. A character who gets everything they want without trying isn't interesting. So you have to have all 3 elements. You have to have the conflict. You have to have I'm trying to achieve something and I can't get it. And I think that's what you're talking about here with actors too, is you have to know what it is that they want so that you can play that part. And Miller is, what does he want? He wants his life to matter. He wants his life to mean something again. He feels, in the last episode, he talks about, I used to be good at this. There must have been a time when I was good at this. He used to take meaning from his job, but the meaning he used to take from his job is gone now. And the job itself is gone. He's never taken any meaning from his belter identity. Like all these things about him that he should have taken meaning from, he can't. And his quest to find Julie and maybe save her or find out what happened, at the very least, find out what happened to her. He's attached to that because he's seeing a thing that maybe he can give his existence meaning. If he can accomplish that, then what he is and what he's done in his life will matter. And I think it's very much, it's exactly what you're talking about. It is, what does he want? And Julie is the path to what he wants, which is that his life has mattered in some way. And interestingly, because you used to serve in the military, a friend of mine who served in Afghanistan. He was a radio guy with the forward operating elements. So he was the guy who was like on the radio with the teams that would go into caves hunting Taliban. And was in those forward operating bases and, went through the thing where they were getting shelled every night, like every night mortars would fall in the camp and all that stuff. He's been through all of that and has talked to me about the PTSD that comes from that, that feeling of constantly being under threat, because at any moment a mortar might just fall into the camp and, you're always on edge. And, you're on the radio with guys, you're telling them where to go, and some of those guys might die. So, there's that PTSD of like, I'm telling people to do things that may get some of them killed. And he talked to me about it after he read the first book. He said he identified with Miller so much because one of the things that he recognized about himself when he came back is he would obsessively attach to things. That if I can accomplish this, this will be a big deal. This will make everything make sense. And so he would obsessively attach to like random goals, and like they would take on so much more importance than they rationally should. And when he said when he was reading Miller, he saw that in Miller, that Miller is processing his PTSD by this search for Julie. That's how he's processing his PTSD. And I thought that was a really interesting insight because it's not something I'd thought about when we were writing the book. But listening to my friend talk about it, I was like, yeah, I think that is what's happening. And I think what you're talking about with Miller and Julie and the conversation about faith is all part of that. I think Miller is a person who is deeply affected by trauma and is trying to find a way to make all the trauma make sense. And Julie becomes, as you said, a guide star, his path through that trauma.
Right. But also, the combination of the loneliness and the combination of, there's something poetic about, the loneliness, the meaninglessness, everything that you just said, the loss of identity, and then Julie Mao, this one righteous thing, this one bright, beautiful guide star that is Julie Mao. Something about that, just, I've talked about it in a few of our podcasts because it's just really interesting to me. And you know, to go back in terms of like a storytelling standpoint, you know, when you talk about finding what you want or what motivates you, sometimes with the great authors, and Stellar Adler always said this, like when you are looking at a play or you're breaking something down, finding what the character wants, a step that should come before that is finding out what the author wants, finding out what the author wants to say, even if it's on a subconscious level. So if you're going to do an Arthur Miller play, you don't start with page 1 of the play. You start on him and you start to figure out what his life is about, what he's always tried to say creatively and artistically, because sometimes a writer has something at their core that they need to say, that they need to express, even if it's on a subconscious level. And it always starts to manifest in all the different works, even if it's different genres or different, there's always that core. And so you start with Arthur Miller and you can't do Death of a Salesman unless you have his idea of what capitalism is and what he wants to say about capitalism. You know, me getting to know you and Daniel a lot was just studying The Expanse and then going back. And then now that I've gotten to know you, I've really kind of have a sense of what it is what's important to you, what your value system is, and how you use story to express that, but also the complexity of human beings. So it's never, you know, there's always, you know, ideas and certain things, but you always have the counter to that idea built into the story as well. And also how they, in that directly manifest in each individual character as well as struggles. And we'll get to this in a second, but, you know, Sheree has that moment. She learns that the Martian ambassador, who was a family friend, killed himself. And he's like, look, we can postpone this meeting and go another time. She's like, no, we're going to do it right now. And so what I've started to realize is that I've been so focused on Amos and him trying to find his moral compass and like his emotional arc and everything to now starting to realize that that's the theme with all the characters. They are all developing in all these certain ways. And you think about Naomi and her relationship with Marco and her having to leave Marco and her son because she felt like that was the best thing to do. Or then you have Holden and him, you know, what's really motivating Holden to do all these righteous, right things? Is it an overwhelming sense of duty and guilt that was instilled in him, you know, into an unhealthy place and an unhealthy level? You know, going back and doing this podcast, obviously, you know, all these other things are starting to reveal itself to me about the story. So Miller gets to Eros, ends up roughing the guy up to figure out where the Anubis is. And then we get to meet Simatimba because he gets thrown in jail and Simatimba comes and bails him out. And Simatimba is played by Kevin Hanchard, and I had a really good time with him. A great, you know, I think he has like 17 kids or something. He's just a family man, good guy, really talented actor.
Yeah, works all the time in Toronto. Like any show that's shot in Toronto, Kevin's in it.
Yeah,
because he's one of those really dependable guys. He lives up there. If you bring him in, he's gonna knock whatever you give him to do out of the park. He's just one of those guys. In
some ways, The Expanse is the Law and Order of Toronto, because every great New York actor has done their Law and Order, and The Expanse has gotten every great Toronto actor, and we're really lucky about that. But to continue what we were discussing earlier, it's the first time Miller says out loud that he believes in Julie, and he says it to his partner. And it kind of ties into the conversation he had before. And he says it to Simatimba, and Simatimba is so moved by the conversation. I'm saying moved, but basically he sees that Miller really needs this. And because it's his friend and because he cares about him, even though he thinks he's losing his mind a little bit, he ends up giving him the footage of Julie Mao. And, you know, leaving, she's walking out, she's a little bit sick, something's a little bit off, and she's headed to the Blue Falcon. And now Miller he's close, man. He can taste it. He's almost there. Simi orders the number 4s, the burrito style, and Miller doesn't even eat it. He fucking takes his coffee and he's fucking gone.
We also do learn this is the scene where we learn the origin of the hat.
Yes.
Because when they're leaving the jail cell, Simatimba says, "Hey, where's my hat?"
Yeah. He's like, and he explains why he gave him the hat, so he keep his head, because he knows that Miller's a hothead. So Miller's off to the Blue Falcon, and then we're going to hold it right there because there's a little special at the end. Maybe our paths will cross. So now we're at the Rocinante. The Rocinante just lands on the asteroid. They are now hot on the heels of Lionel Pulaski and trying to figure out who that is. Now, what I think is interesting about this, and I think people watching this, to give this some context or give it an idea of what this really means, if they're finding this level of technology and stealth technology in this ship on an asteroid, but it doesn't have any connection or allegiance to a world government, that's like going in a parking garage and finding like a state-of-the-art F-18, like stashed away somewhere, and you're like, where? And you can't trace it to anything. It's not Russian, it's not US, it's not Canadian. It's like and it's also an F-18 where it's a little bit altered, a little bit different. So you can't say, oh, that's US technology or that's that. So I thought I think that's a really cool, mysterious. You see this ship, and when they're going through, and I think that's a really cool thing.
You think Google doesn't have some F-18s hidden somewhere?
when Google takes over the world. Oh, what's interesting is, so when they go there and they see the stealth ship, Amos is sitting next to Alex. It reminds me that we used to have in the Rocinante a co-pilot chair.
We still do.
Where is it?
It's actually not a co-pilot chair. It's the gunner's chair.
Oh, and so did they only put it in there when they need it? Obviously.
No, they're always both there. The thing is, the gunner's chair is lower and more forward of the pilot's chair. So the pilot can see the gunner's station from where he's at.
I know what it is now. So they deconstructed and reconstructed the Rossi because we moved it for this season. We've been shooting a lot this season already, and we've spent some time up there. Because so when they rebuilt it, they actually left that seat out for the camera angles. So more room for the camera, whatever. Obviously, they could probably replace it. Okay, so that, because I remember seeing that, and I was like, wait a minute, where did that seat go? Because I remember it on our first creation of the Rossi, because both those seats were permanent, but they probably made the other one where they can take it in and out. Now we are in the airlock. And we're getting ready to go out to the asteroid, and we're going to try to figure out what this stealth ship is and who it belongs to. But I want to tell a story here, because this was the sickest I've ever been in my life, and I had COVID. This was worse than COVID. I don't know if you remember this, Ty.
Yeah, I do remember. Everybody was sick. I remember Steven doing a scene. As soon as the director yelled cut, he ran off to the side and puked in a garbage can for 2 minutes.
We both did.
Yeah,
we both did.
It was horrible.
So
everybody had norovirus. Norovirus just swept through the production. Everybody had it.
I didn't even end up figuring out what it was. I just know I had to. I thought it was over. I thought I was done. But so when we were in that airlock in that scene, to give people a little context, the Canterbury spacesuits that we wear are the bane of our existence. They're the most uncomfortable. It's a 7-ply wetsuit that's been modified to create the spacesuit, and then you got this 50-gallon drum on your head, so when you're in there, it traps in the heat. It's basically you're sitting in a sauna, and which most days are fine. It's no big deal. But when you were sick, Steven and I were the first ones to get sick. And we knew, especially in these days, we had no time and no money. And, we had to kind of press through, and we knew that it was going to be a seat. And we were like, I think we can get through it. And so they literally had trash cans on set, and they had the props people ready to take off the helmet. So you do a scene, take off the thing, and you would just hang over the trash can and puke. And sometimes you didn't have to puke, and you just hang there and be like, okay, I'm ready. Whoa. No, I'm ready. Oh, and it was miserable. And in between takes, Steven would just lie down on a cot. Like, they had cots there, and I would just lie back on the thing and just close my eyes until they were ready for the other take. But I was watching that, and I was like, oh my God, I remember it. Like, shot back memories of PTSD. So, when I was talking to you earlier about two of my favorite sequences, this is my first favorite sequence, because this is a monster in the house sequence, right? So they're having to navigate this mysterious ship. You don't know where the ship came from. You don't know this technology, who it belongs to. And they're trying to find all these clues. And the way that it was edited, the way the music was, I think it's the closest to a horror movie that we've came to this point. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ty and I are both massive fans of horror movies, and we both love it. And I think the energy of horror used in, all kinds of movies or other genres, I think it works so effectively because it just really raises the stakes and raises the tension, and it makes mystery more interesting. And so in the Expanse world, up until this point, what do we know about this ship? So
what they discover when they find it is that it's the one that blew up the Canterbury, which is a big deal for Holden to have finally tracked down the ship that did that. But yeah, people ask about this a lot. It's complicated, There's a lot of different things that have happened here. This ship is the ship that ferried the protomolecule away from Phoebe. It's the ship that captured Julie's crew. It's the ship that destroyed the Canterbury. And it was the ship that was supposed to bring the protomolecule to Eros. But obviously it didn't.
So they're on this ship. Amos turns the reactor on. And they're going down, and then we've caught a glimpse of what this blue stuff is early in the pilot episode.
Yeah,
and you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of Game of Thrones when you see the White Walker in the first episode, and then you don't see him again for like a whole season. But then you're always like, "What is that?" And that kind of happened with you see the protomolecule, and you're like, "What the?" And then as the thing progresses, that's always in the back of your mind, like, when are they going to get to that again? So the reactor turns on, and this thing starts to come alive. This blue, mysterious, and it's not good. And then everything starts to click. Oh, whoever was on this ship, it seems like everybody's dead. Whoever's on this ship, they realize that this thing is coming alive. They vented it, they escaped, and then they had this, and there's blood smeared on the wall. People are dead. And that is just such a cool, mysterious, well-edited, well-built-up scene. Yeah, it was one of my favorite parts of the show.
Yeah, and we show that reactor covered in biological goo at the end of the teaser in episode 1. And we finally get back there. Amos turns the reactor on, and you get Holden and Naomi in the reactor room. We already know what's in there. We saw it in episode 1. We're just waiting for it to come and get them.
So Amos and Kenzo, their job was they went to the main flight deck, and they were getting information from the computers, and they figured out that the shuttle and whatever, Lionel Polanski was at the Blue Falcon. So now all the worlds are about to collide. What's really cool about this is almost like you're watching two movies at the same time, and you become fans of two movies, and all of a sudden they merge. In one of, I think, the most interesting and exciting shootout scenes in Expanse history, and probably my favorite scene of the Expanse universe. The way that it was edited, the music, the elevator type music that was playing, when they come in the world of this gritty hotel, they go to the Blue Falcon. There's all this tension. Kenzo's up to something. He's alerting Aaron Wright's people where they are. That there's imminent danger coming. They can feel this imminent danger. They've just confronted this blue protomolecule weird thing, and they know somehow it connects to this person in the Blue Falcon, and they don't have any idea what they're going to find in the Blue Falcon, so they're on high alert. And it's contrasted with this benign, gritty hotel life of the guy checking people in. You hear these like random conversations in the background. People are getting food out of the machine, and the tension, and it's so well done. And then Elias makes a run for it, and then all hell breaks loose, and they're just shooting, just going, and you got Kaz jumping over the couch. You have Holden grabbing Naomi and getting around the checkout counter. And you got Amos just blasting away in the thing. And then Miller comes in. And then he comes in and the whole worlds collide. And then he's like, shit just follows you around, doesn't it, pal? And it's just the perfect line and the perfect timing. So do you want to talk about the creation of that sequence and that scene? And
oh, God, I want to talk about all the things we fucked up.
Is that in the book, by the way?
Yeah, that is in the book. I mean, the how it plays out is a little different, but yes, it is a scene from the book. But there's we talked about this before. All the things that you wish you had back, all the moments you wish you had back. There's there's stuff like in the script we describe, Alex goes over the couch and he's behind it as the bullets are flying. He's laying flat on the floor and holes are getting blown in the couch above him, spraying stuffing all over him, right? And that was intended to show that while he's behind something, he's not safe, to make it scarier, right? And he's supposed to be just down there, like laying as flat as he can as bullets are just whizzing, inches above his head, right? Going through the couch. So a couple of things happened there, which is that we had the couch ready to rig it with squibs to blow the holes through it and spray the foam all over Kaz as he's laying there. And we just ran out of time. We ran out of time. That there was a complicated sequence in there. There was a lot of reset. We've talked about resets before where when you blow holes in things, if you use squibs, the reset means you have to put, they have panels already set up that you can put on the wall that have all the correct stuff in them, but you still got to take the old panel off. You got to put the new panel on. So every cut and then if you reshoot the sequence again, it's a big deal. And it was an ambitious sequence and we just ran out of time. So we never shot the scene. It was supposed to be a low camera angle scene down with Kaz on the floor with the couch on the left as the bullets are going through the couch and like blowing holes in it and stuff. We never shot that. So people watching, they go, "Whoa, what is a bulletproof couch?" It was never supposed to be a bulletproof couch. It was supposed to be he's hiding behind it, but it's not actually protective. It's just bullets are coming right through it. And the second thing was, and I'm gonna throw some shade on you actors here. One thing actors hate is they hate to appear weak or afraid. And anytime you want an actor to appear weak or afraid, you will get a fight. They don't want to do that. They don't want to appear weak and afraid. And the sequence is written. Alex is not a gunfighter. Alex is a pilot. Alex has never fired a gun in anger in his life. And when the bullets start flying, he dives behind that couch. He's supposed to be down there laying as flat to the floor as he can while bullets are whizzing over his head, hoping that he's not getting shot. And when he fires, he's supposed to just stick the gun up over the couch like this and fire off a bunch of shots randomly. Because he doesn't know, he's not a gunfighter.
He did do that, right?
He didn't. We kept telling him that's what we wanted, and he insisted on popping his head up and acting like he was aiming his shots because he didn't want to appear weak. He didn't want to appear like the only guy in the room who doesn't know how to shoot a gun. And I'm not throwing shade on Kaz specifically here because you get that fight from every actor. Nobody wants to be the guy hiding behind the couch.
It depends on the character. I think if an actor truly believes, this is thinking the best of an actor, but if an actor truly believes like in this story and who you created me to be, whatever, this doesn't make sense, that means that's about the character and that's about the story. And that's something you have to pay attention to. But I think writers and directors have a good sense about when actors give notes, if the notes are about the character and what is honest about the story or what is about them and about how they're going to look in their ego. For me, and I understand what you're saying about, actors looking weak or whatever, but the reality is like, well, what's honest to the character? Like if it doesn't, it doesn't make sense, if Barney Fife is in a James Bond shootout with, high level foreign Russian assassins. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you're fucking Barney Fife.
And Barney only has one bullet that he keeps in his pocket.
He only has one. Or Roscoe Pico Train. Like he's never supposed to catch. What if Roscoe Pico Train was like, you know what? I should be catching these Duke boys. This is bullshit. I should be on their tail. That doesn't make any sense. So, one of the things, like for me, I have endless amount of patience if there's disagreement about story and people's heart is in like, how do we make the story or the scene or the character better? Yeah. I have zero patience when it's distracting from the story and it's about that specific actor and that certain thing.
I would say that you have a more nuanced view of this process. I don't think everybody has that level of nuance when they look at the process. And I appreciate that about you. That's one of the reasons I like working with you. And I'm not trying to throw Kaz under the bus here because I've had that exact conversation with many, many actors. So it's not just him. But there is this natural resistance to being the guy in the scene who is weak. There's this natural like, no, because the argument we kept getting was Holden is shooting and aiming at guys. Amos is shooting and aiming at guys. How come I'm the only one who's not shooting and aiming at guys? And the answer we kept giving is, because you're a pilot, this is scary as shit, and you should be scared, was not a compelling argument to the actor involved. But I just, the main thing to say here is, no, that is not a bulletproof couch. The bullets were supposed to be flying through it, and he was not supposed to be sitting up and shooting over the couch as if the couch was going to stop bullets for him. He was supposed to be laying his ass flat on the floor and avoiding getting shot.
Right. So I know that we talked, we talked about Thomas, and we talked about how Thomas just doesn't like to wear shoes. Just doesn't, just not wear shoes. So he shows up this night to work, and they go, hey, because the director at the time was like, hey, that there's glass on the, broken glass everywhere, whatever. We're going to need you to wear shoes for the scene. And he goes, oh, okay. All right. So he leaves, and we're thinking we're going to put the shoes on, and he comes back with a coffee with no shoes. And then it's like, all right, well, we're out of time now, so let's just shoot. And so he comes back, coffee, and shoots. And
that's fucking hilarious.
And also while I was shooting this, poor Steven Strait, we both had the flu, right? We got over it. It came back. Steven got it twice. And then this is the scene when he got hit twice. And this is the scene actually where he would do a take and then go lay on a cot and then do another take. It's like he got it twice in one episode. Oh man, it was terrible. I really like the moment when Thomas says to Steven, look, I'm going to check on this room. And if you keep hassling me, there's going to be another body on the floor. And Amos is like, he's like, I like that guy. I get where he's coming from. I fucking get it.
Well, I think what Amos appreciates about Miller in that scene is the directness. Miller's just stating a fact.
Yeah. Stating a fact. Like, this is happening, and there's going to be.
Yeah, this is what's happening. Here's the penalty if you try to stop me. Yeah.
But Jay, it's funny you talk about, you see a scene like that, and you realize now how much, even if we did that today, or if we did this, later seasons, like how much more time and how much more, effort we could have done that. But sometimes when you don't have the right amount of time and the right amount of money, because I remember we shot that scene not only in a night, we shot it in hours, right? And so a lot of times you go back and you look at that scene and you realize, if this was another movie, they probably would take 2 days with this scene, 3 days with this scene.
Oh yeah. We should have had much more time to shoot that. And it was our first season, and so you understand that we would have more time now. But you go back and I think it's just there's something kind of special about it when I go back and watch it, knowing what we were up against, knowing how fast we were, knowing that we were fucking all sick, knowing that and how we all kind of just bonded together and made that happen. And so now we get to room 211. Wait, what's the Shining room? 217? Oh yeah. What room 237 something?
237, 217. Anyway,
I don't remember. But I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah. So we get to the room, we walk in, and Miller discovers and finally gets to meet Julie, and we see her for the first time, and she's been overtaken by this mysterious blue goo that we don't know what it is. That was a really heartbreaking scene. I mean, you could see Thomas's heart breaking.
Yeah, and you can tell who the good actors are because they don't need lines. He says one word in that whole sequence. He just says her name once, and everything else is just played on his face and in his physicality, and that's how you know who the great actors are. And Thomas is such a gifted natural actor. You give him a scene like that, and he's just gonna kill. And the thing is too that you don't need to do a lot. He's not being dramatic. He's not like breaking down into tears or sobbing or like clutching his head in his hands or any of that. It's very subtle, but I think the more subtle it is, the more powerful it is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think his character being overcome with emotion doesn't really make as much sense because it would be something, it would deaden him. It would cut him off. It would be, he would be completely deadened inside from that. Now, it will be there, but it's not consistent with who he has been as a character if they would just break down or they have this thing like that. And so, yeah, you see the cracks, and then you have that moment where you can be truly vulnerable, but you have to earn that moment. You have to tell the story of who he is, how he deals with emotion, and then having that thing that can finally break it free. Finding that we can truly be authentic for who he is and not worrying about, you know, the world that he lives in and posturing and having to protect himself and all that, just to fucking let it all go and just be. And that ends up being what I think is in that moment in the future is going to be the most beautiful moment in The Expanse.
And I will say, having now written and produced a bunch of seasons of television and worked with actors a lot and on script and, you know, doing rehearsals and doing rewrites and all that stuff. My favorite actors to work with are the ones who come to you and go, can I cut this line? I don't need to say this. I can play this. I can play this moment. I don't need to say anything. Those are my favorite actors because one of the things I've noticed is bad actors want more lines. They're always wanting to add lines. They want to get more lines. And great actors are always trying to cut lines. And Thomas is one of those guys. You know, he's one of those guys. He's like, I don't need to say that. I'll just play that. You'll feel it in what I do. And that is, as a writer, you know, you would assume that writers want to write a lot of lines because that's how we get to show off as we write all these clever lines. But the reality is what we're hoping for as writers is great moments in the show. And if that great moment isn't my clever dialogue, if that great moment is a look on an actor's face that tells everything about what they're feeling, that's so much better. It's thrilling to a writer and producer when an actor is making that request. Like, I'll just play this. You'll feel it in the moment.
I'm always trying to cut lines, not because I'm a great actor, but because I don't like memorizing lines.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, is we don't know. So we assume that because you're trying to cut all your lines.
Yeah, but you know what I want to tell people, sometimes you want to say those actors that are constantly trying to get lines and maneuver of like, I should say that and take lines. What you want to say to them is like, you're active in the scene. You're listening. You're there. There's things that you want to say, but then you think better of it and you don't say. There's things, all that stuff is just as interesting as saying shit, you know? And so what you're doing is you're creating a slice of life within the context of the scene and wanting what everybody wants in this scene. In these imagined circumstances, you're making them real.
I mean, it's what we were talking about before. It's that thing of, you know, I was talking about actors don't like to appear weak. For some people, they don't want to be the only person in the scene not talking. Like if I'm the only person in the scene not talking, then how will people know I was in the scene? Why am I the only one who's not saying things? You know, it's like you're talking about, it's very self-focused. Whereas what you're talking about is exactly right. And one of the things, and I'm going to blow a little sunshine up your ass for a second. One of the things in the first season that became very clear, and when we watched dailies and when we watched early edits of the show, and that Narain and I and the directors would talk about a lot, is we didn't give you a ton of dialogue, but you, in every scene, you are doing something interesting, whether you're saying anything or not. Like, even if two other people are talking and you're just there in the background, you're always involved, you're always engaged, you're always like reacting to what's happening. And it's not big and dramatic. It's not, whoa, it's, you know, it's small, subtle stuff, but it's always interesting. It's always an interesting take on the moment. That's part of the reason why we were so happy with your casting and why going forward, you got more and more stuff to do. We kept giving you more and more stuff to do because we knew when we gave you things, you'd be interesting. So all of this is my long way of saying, if you are an actor, if you're interested in being an actor as a profession, listen to what Wes is saying there, that even if you don't have any dialogue in a scene, the camera sees you. You're not invisible. The camera will see you there. And if you're engaged in the scene, if you are reacting to what's happening, if you're paying attention, if you're not just waiting for somebody to give you a line so that you can be in the scene, that is noticed. The writers see it. The directors see it. The producers of the show see it. And they go, oh, that's an interesting actor over there. Let's give them some stuff to do and see what they do with it. What Wes was saying about being involved in the scene, even if you don't have dialogue, it's, I think, maybe the most important thing an actor can learn.
Well done. Well put, Ty. So now we're at Tycho Station, and and we have Fred Johnson. The Nathan Hale is on the way to Tycho full speed. He's about 2 days away. Nathan Hale is the ship that Aaron Wright has sent, the gunship.
Yeah, it's a battleship, so it's a scary threat.
Now, Fred Johnson has a Martian chip. Is this the Martian chip how did he get this chip? Is it with Lopez, the chip that Lopez had in his suit?
Yeah, it's the recording of the battle with the Doniger and the stealth ships that Captain Yao gave to Lopez to get off of the Doniger. It's all of the information about the fight. Lopez hid it in his armor. The plan was to deliver it to Mars, but of course Lopez dies. They take Lopez's body to Tycho, and Fred says, "I'll take care of him." And you see Fred searching Lopez's armor and then finding the chip.
All right, so that was season 1, episode 8. And Ty, I was inspired by that Monster in the House sequence when they go and explore the stealth ship. So I wanted to ask you, what are your top 3 favorite Monster in the House movies? And so the criteria for Monster in the House is, a monster in the house it has to have supernatural powers, and it can also, so supernatural powers could also be an insane person that has super strength, but it has to be in the house, meaning an enclosed space. That can mean family, that can mean a city, that can mean the world, but it has to be contained within this environment. And then it has to, the thing has to start with a sin. And so that could be somebody is guilty of bringing the monster in the house. It's a transgression or something that happens. That could even include ignorance for what that sin is. So I'm going to give you my list, which is the correct list. And then, and then maybe that'll spark something for you or give you ideas. But these are my favorite, okay? So the first one is Predator. The second one is The Exorcist. And the third one, and I think this might be my ultimate, this is up there, but An American Werewolf in London. And then I have honorable mentions. My 3 honorable mentions are Nightbreed and Rosemary's Baby and Jacob's Ladder. So
you won't be surprised to hear this, but of course my list would skew much more sci-fi.
Oh, wait, hold on. Before you do that, I gotta give you ground rules. Can't use Alien.
But the number one is Alien. Alien is the best Monster in the House movie
But everybody knows how we feel about Alien.
So you're immediately taking away the best one ever
well, you
made.
have to, because if we say Alien, everybody's like, I fucking get it. You guys like Alien. Jesus Christ, y'all seen another movie?
All right.
And so
number two would be The Thing.
Oh, you beat me on that one. I forgot about The Thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best, because talk about being trapped.
Yeah. All right, I'm changing my list.
Everything outside is death. It's frozen. You can't even move from one building to the other without going through like deadly, frozen tundra. The monster is the best monster in the house because it's, there's a monster there, but it could be your buddy. You don't know.
Yeah.
And so the paranoia of it, that anybody you're talking to might be the monster, when they start to realize that and they're trying to figure out how to test. That scene where everybody's tied to a chair and
that's the greatest
Greedy's
scene.
Testing the blood with the red hot wire. One of the best sequences in sci-fi horror ever.
What's interesting about that sequence, if I watch that right now on YouTube, I still jump. There's something that they do about the rhythm, and then when that thing happens, whatever, and then they get that side talking going, and then they make you relax, and then he puts it in, and it fucking flashes. What a great. Yeah, you're right. I can't believe I didn't. Yeah, I'm disappointed in myself, and I've let all you 4 or 5 listeners down. I've let the producers down, and I let you down, Ty. And I'm sorry. Yeah. And that'll never happen again. It's up there with Alien for me. I think it's one of the greatest. I love that movie. I remember seeing that movie with my dad. It was like 11 or 12 o'clock at night. I was visiting my dad, and we watched that movie. And I'm obviously. You know how I feel about Kurt Russell. And, Kurt Russell was in this thing. And this was like, around, because him and John Carpenter did Escape from New York. So it was around, he did the thing. And, originally Kurt Russell wasn't supposed to be in it. That they were having conversations as friends trying to find who could play his character. And then ultimately, Carpenter's like, you got to do it, man. This is it. And then Kurt Russell's like, all right.
Well, I'm glad he did, because it's one of the great characters in sci-fi horror. MacReady's awesome.
Yeah, so good. Helicopter pilot, got the beards going out there in the frozen. Wasn't that shot in Canada?
Probably. I mean, it was certainly shot someplace that has a lot of snow.
I feel like it's shot right here on my porch. It's so damn cold here in Toronto right now.
Yeah, no, it's one of the great sci-fi horror films of all time. There's no question. So a lot of the picks that you have, they don't feel contained enough for me. If I'm going to do Monster in the House, it has to feel claustrophobic. That's the thing with The Thing is it feels very claustrophobic because you know there's a monster and running away isn't an option. You can't run away. There's nowhere to go. You're stuck, right? And for me, that is an important element in a Monster in the House story. So another one is The Grudge, the Japanese horror film The Grudge.
Yeah.
You know, you go in that house, you can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the thing in that house is going to kill you, and there's no way to get away.
Yeah. I was a fan of the Grudge. I think it's the least interesting choice on your list. But
the first time you watch The Grudge, it's scary as fuck.
Yeah, it is scary.
That's a very and I have a real fondness for good Japanese horror.
Yeah. I don't want to leave The Thing just yet, though. The thing about The Thing is is like what you said earlier is like we should talk more about how scary the thing is, that you can't put your finger on it. It's smarter than you. It inhabits all these different, you know, and also what's more intimate than a friend or somebody you have a relationship or some connection, that they can automatically become a killer, you know, and the thing against you. And so once you start to play with that trust and you're in an enclosed area and the psychological impact of that is what's scary. And that's why it's so well written. And you know, hopefully one day we'll have George R.R. Martin on and we would debate the John Carpenter's The Thing. Is it a better movie than the 1950s The Thing? Because Ty and
he's already agreed to do it. We just got to find a time when our schedules line up, because he and I have had that debate before. George is old and set in his ways and refuses to admit how wrong he is.
But Ty and I are squarely in the Carpenter camp, and George is in the.
Look, I'm not going to say Thing from Another World is a bad movie. It's not. It's a good movie. It has some great dialogue in it. Has some nice tense moments in it. But the reality is, they're fighting a space carrot, a blood drinking space carrot. That's not as scary as like the shape shifting monster from, you know, outer space. The shapeshifter is so much scarier. But you know, the other one that I think is an incredible Monster in the House story is the Twilight Zone with the kid who can wish you into the cornfield.
Oh yeah, the where basically he controls we talked about it last episode, where he controls the whole thing. Yeah. That's a great Monster in the House story, because the thing is, he cuts that town off from the rest of the world. Yeah. You can't leave. It's a good life. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't leave that town, and he has absolute control over the town.
Uh-huh.
And again, it's that sense of claustrophobia, because the thing that story is not only can you not leave the town, so you're trapped, it's claustrophobic that way, but he can read your mind. So you're not even safe in your own head. So it's not just that you can't escape the town, it is that you are constantly policing your own thoughts. Because if he detects a thought he doesn't like, you get wished out into the cornfield.
Damn, that's scary.
Right?
Yeah, that is scary.
It is a classic version of that kind of story, when you're not even safe in your own head. And I agree with you on The Exorcist. The Exorcist is one of the greatest movies of all time. So yeah, 100% The Exorcist.
Something just came up when you said kid in cornfield and Monster in the House. It made me think of Children of the Corn.
Yeah.
That movie, because I got that sense of claustrophobia when they were stuck in that town and they couldn't get out, and they had all these. And then you think, these are kids, they'll fuck them up. But those kids were like, you know, and wasn't that guy the lead in that? He's a tennis player, right? What was his name? But did you like that movie? Were you a fan of Children of the Corn? Malachi.
I thought it was a little cheesy.
Yeah,
it was a little cheesy. And look, and I love Sarah Connor, so you know, watching her in anything makes me happy. But it was a little cheesy. It was a little cheesy. And the other thing too is okay. So you're talking about their kids they're gonna fuck them up. So there's this movie that I watched. This was years ago. It's a Spanish film, Spanish language film about this married couple. She's pregnant. She's like super pregnant. And they go to this little island off the coast of Spain where it's like a vacation island. Like it's this quaint little island with a few houses on it. And they're going to go stay at like this bed and breakfast for a couple of days. And it's like their last vacation together before she has the kid, right? It's that kind of idea. And they get there and all the adults are missing and they can only find kids. And it's that sort of, the story is it's that sort of children of corn thing. Like the kids have gotten infected with something that makes them killers. And they've murdered all the adults on the island. And, you know, this couple gradually comes to realize that. And then they realize the kids are going to try to kill them too. Right. And there's these scenes where, and the idea is you got a couple of people who are getting ready to have their own kid. And now they're being attacked by kids that want to murder them. And so, of course, they're feeling very maternal and paternal and all that stuff. And they don't want to hurt these kids because they're going to have a kid and they don't want to hurt kids and all that. I'm watching it and like, it was very effective. It's a very effective horror film. But the whole time I was watching it, I'm like, I don't have kids. The minute I realize these kids are killers and they're trying to kill me and my wife, I am just gonna be a tornado through this town. There's scenes of like a kid comes out with like a little knife and he starts chasing the dude and the dude runs away. And I'm like, dude, just knock that fucking kid out. like this is like a 7-year-old with a knife. I'm telling you, I am gonna wreck that kid.
Hey.
And I'm like telling this to Daniel, you know, I'm like telling him about this movie. And he's like, you know, most people don't feel that way, right? Most people would be like, oh, I shouldn't hurt these kids. I'm like, I agree with that. You should not hurt kids. And I've never hurt a kid in my life. But if a kid tries to stab my wife with a knife,
it's fucking
that kid's getting fucked up.
But listen, they should have had a sequel to like this couple after they've had the kid for like 5 years. And then go back because then they're so, you know, having a kid like that kept them up all night. That's ungrateful. All these things. And they come back and just it's on, motherfuckers. You know. Okay, and since you know this was a short episode and it wasn't a lot going on, I have one more. And to honor our shootout scene, I was going to ask you what are your 3 favorite of all time shootouts in movies, and I'll give you my list, which is the correct list, and then you could, and maybe that'll spark other ideas. Number 1 for me is Tombstone.
So, and you're talking about the shootout where he wades out into the river and he's yelling no.
No, not that one. No. I mean, look, Kurt Russell is, he can do no wrong in my book, but that wasn't his best moment. Tombstone, John Wick, the gunfight at the Red Room, and, the greatest shootout on film of all time is Heat and the bank robbery scene.
That's a pretty good one.
And, you know, with Heat, like, you know, they're using real bullets. I mean, you know, that you can hear the rhythm in the guns and you see the cars getting shot up and then the amount of, you know, and they have pretty decent firearm skills. You know, they worked on it and they trained on it. But I also love the fact that there's this standoff. And because they have the amount of firepower, so when towards the end of the shootout and Val Kilmer gets shot, he's on the ground, and all these cops have their cars lined up and they're going back and forth. And De Niro and them just slaughters all of those cops until they're all dead. And then he comes and picks up Val Kilmer, and then they have other gauntlets of cops, and then the camera cuts back and every car is just riddled with bullets. And then I don't, you know, it's a movie. I don't condone, you know, people killing cops or anybody killing anybody. But I just think like,
there are some people that I condone killing.
Yeah. But just saying like, I'm just going to stand here and kill every obstacle I have in my way before I move on. I think that, you know, I haven't seen that in shootouts before because they're usually running and shooting behind their back and all this. But he was just like, all right. He just planted his feet, loaded up his gun and just went to town and just riddled all these cars with bullets and guns. I wonder how many rounds they shot in that movie. But yeah, I think that's, you know.
So I of course I always tend to skew sci-fi, but I'm going to add 2 to your list that are from a movie and its sequel. The Terminator going into the police station in Terminator 1, one of the greatest shootouts of all time.
We've talked about the Terminator.
From room to room.
I'm trying to expand. We talked about the Terminator. Oh no, we didn't, did we? Or did we?
We haven't. And then the second one is in Terminator 2, the escape from Dyson's lab. where John Connor tells the Terminator he's not allowed to kill any of the cops. And the reason I love those two so much is you get to see two different versions. So we've seen Terminator. We know that if you say, Arnold, you can kill as many cops as you want to get us out of here, he's just going to mow everybody down and they're going to get away clean, right? We've seen him do that. We've seen him kill like 40 cops in a police station by himself without even breaking stride. We know he can do that. So then when all the cops show up and they're trapped in Dyson's lab and John Connor says, you can't kill anybody, that's what creates the tension of that scene, is how is he going to get them out of there when he can't kill anybody, right?
How smart.
It's such an effective moment. It's so well done. How, that he's like, now he has a rule that he has to follow. And how is he going to do it? And when he's up on the roof with the minigun and just like blows the shit out of all their cars. And then when he's going through the lobby, he's just shooting everybody in the leg. And he's shooting the dudes with they've got the tear gas gun. He's shooting dudes with the tear gas gun to knock them down. I mean, so well done.
It is.
Jim Cameron is one of my favorite directors, and those two sequences are amazing.
And it's so smart. I don't know if we've talked about Jim Cameron yet on this thing, but what really separates him is he has both sides of the brain working. He's very artistic. He's a good writer. He knows how to tell a good story. That is case in point right there. To create, it's the Superman dilemma, right? It's why they created Kryptonite. And so if you have somebody like Terminator, which is really compelling and interesting when he's the antagonist, but then now when he is the protagonist, and then how do you create an obstacle for the super soldier, the guy that nobody can hurt, and you just walk through and let everybody down? It's so smart, it's so inventive, and it's so interesting, and it adds like this kind of comedic element to like how he's just blowing people's kneecaps out and they're screaming in pain.
Those two are both great. And then another one that you haven't mentioned that I think when we all saw it the first time, it blew our minds, was the lobby shootout in The Matrix. I mean, when we all saw that slow motion shootout in the lobby of The Matrix, I think every single person walked out of that theater with just their minds completely blown out of their skulls. It was amazing.
And when
do you read comic books?
No.
Okay. Well, there's a comic book artist named Geoff Darrow who is famous for doing like huge panels, like full page panels, where just filled with objects, like 1,000 little things and all intricately drawn. That hotel lobby shootout, I know for a fact that the Wachowskis are Geoff Darrow fans, because that hotel lobby shootout, there are panels of that are like almost frames from a Geoff Darrow comic, with just thousands of little tiny pieces of the pillars like flying through the air, like everywhere around them, bullet casings dropping everywhere, people, like 6 people moving all at the same time. It was an incredible sequence.
Yeah, it's hard to go back. If somebody's never seen The Matrix or they weren't there from the beginning, to really explain the impact of going to see that movie in the theater. I had no idea. I mean,
nobody did.
The first time she levitated and it froze and the camera spun around her and she kicked, I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is she, a sorcerer? And then all this stuff happens and it's like, oh my, I've never seen anything like it. It blew my mind. And, The Matrix, because of the sequel and how many times people have seen it now and they kind of have been desensitized to it. It doesn't, obviously everybody thinks The Matrix is one of the greatest sci-fis of movies, of all time, but it doesn't get the actual, I don't think it gets the respect it deserves in a lot of ways because of that first viewing of going to the theater and being completely exposed to something that I've never seen before.
And everybody has ripped off that style.
Yeah.
So now every movie has that style.
Yeah.
So you watch it, if you haven't seen it before, you watch it, you're like, oh, it just looks like every other movie now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, what's funny is so that movie and Phantom Menace came out really close to each other. And I remember I went to a party. It's a couple of good friends of mine who were all into the same like sci-fi kind of shit, and the three of us are hanging out in the backyard having beers. So somebody goes, hey, have you guys seen The Matrix? And we're all like, everybody's like, holy shit, where did that come from? I saw it twice the same day. Like I saw it and I walked out and I immediately bought a ticket and went and saw it again because it fucking blew my mind. We're all talking like that movie was amazing. Who made that? Like, we got to follow those directors and see what other stuff they've made. And like, we're super into it. And then somebody else goes, hey, did you see Phantom Menace? And everybody goes, yeah.
And then who invited the Phantom Menace guy?
Well, we all seen it. You know, it's like everybody had seen it, but we just didn't want to talk about it. We were all like, yeah.
Yeah. But I do want to say, you and I haven't talked about American Werewolf in London on the podcast yet. And I even think like maybe we could do a separate podcast, you know, like we did on Alien, just on that.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on all of the werewolf movies because I have seen every werewolf movie. And I'm a huge werewolf fan.
Where does American Werewolf in London stand in those movies? Is that high in your esteem?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the best horror comedies, and horror comedy's hard to do. Yeah, it's one of the best horror comedies I think ever made. It's a classic for a reason. It's brilliant.
It's genuinely funny and genuinely scary.
That's the thing with horror comedy is you have to be both. And when people do horror comedy and fail, it's because they were one but not the other.
Mm-hmm. And to me, that's one of the most unique genres to really get right. The horror comedies. I mean, how many other horror comedies where you're legitimately scared and then also legitimately laughing? And the whole opening of these two college students going to town, like in London, and their dialogue, it's so funny, and you know, you just instantly likable, and you really connect to them. And then they go to that bar, and then and then it has that interesting, mysterious. There's a pentagram on the wall, and you know, and they have obviously they got a secret, and then like, all right, we got to go out, and they don't want them to leave, and then they go, and then they break the rules. They didn't stay on the road. They broke the rules. They went to do a cut through, and then the moon come and the horse, you know, and then you hear the wolf tracking them, and it's just, and Rick Baker did the makeup, and I've never, you know, that was the first time, like,
unbelievable makeup,
unbelievable, and that was the first time I saw a transformation or, you know, a werewolf transformation like that, and it looked so painful, but it was the first time I saw it in light, like it was so lit, like brightly lit. Yeah. Usually it happens in the dark and, you know, misshapes and everything, but it was like in the light. And he's like excruciating pain and going through this change. But it's just such a unique, interesting, has a different feel. I just love that movie. As like John Landis was firing on all cylinders during that period. Yeah. No,
it's a great movie, and I've watched it many times because like I said, I love werewolves, and it's one of the good ones. Did you ever watch the Werewolf TV show?
Mm-mm.
It only lasted one season.
What network?
I think it was Fox, but it only lasted one season. But the only reason I bring it up is because you're talking about the makeup effects, and they use that Rick Baker style makeup effect on this TV show, where it seemed very painful, and you know, all the bones cracking and stuff. But one of the things they did in that is all of the werewolves in that TV show Werewolf had their own version of the transformation. It was always a little different, and the main bad guy, who was this werewolf, I think his name was like Scarzini or something like that. The way he did it is he would hook his thumbs under his jaw like this and tear his face off, and the wolf face would be behind it and then push out. It was fucking amazing.
So were they in control of being able to, because there's different kinds of, you know, those horror movies where sometimes they're in control, or when they, like Teen Wolf, like you can become the wolf when you're ready to become. Were they in control of it?
No, in the Werewolf TV show, it was either during the full moon or under extreme, I believe it was either the full moon or extreme physical distress. Like if you were being tortured or something.
Horror network TV, I just don't see how that could work. I can see it working like a horror series on like an HBO or, you know, something like that. But is there a genuinely scary horror series?
Yeah. The first season of Channel Zero is genuinely creepy.
Is that on Shudder?
No, it was I believe it was on, the first season was on Sci-Fi.
Channel Zero, really genuinely creepy.
Genuinely creepy.
What's it about? I never heard of it.
Well, it's multiple seasons, and each season is a different story. It's kind of like American Horror Story, but I think better.
Oh, okay. So it's like a Twilight Zone type situation?
But it's like each episode is a season long.
Oh, each episode is, okay. So there's like a mini series every
Yeah.
Because I think it's possible, like there's some really scary, you know, Twilight Zones, and there's some really scary like standalone, but to have like a full series be scary. But I guess maybe there is some that I'm not thinking of right now.
Give that first season of Channel Zero a try.
I will.
I found it genuinely creepy.
I liked the 80s Salem's Lot. I enjoyed that. You remember that?
Oh yeah, with the dude from Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hutch.
Yeah, Hutch.
Yeah, no, I liked that one too. You know, I saw it when I was pretty young, or like quite a bit younger than I am now, like probably like 12 or 13 maybe. I thought it was great, but my favorite part about it is they get to the end. You know, they defeat the vampire in Salem, and they get to the end, and then cut to them. The two of them are in a church. They're filling vials of water up with holy water. They're getting their crossbows ready, and they're on the hunt for another vampire. And I'm like, because the kid is with him, and I'm like, holy shit, that's what I want to do. I want to be that dude. I want to be like the 15-year-old kid who's like, you know, the sidekick to the vampire hunter, like going and like loading up with holy water and crossbows to fuck up some vampires.
Yeah. What was Corey Feldman and Corey Haim's name? Were they the Bash Brothers? The
Frog Brothers.
The Frog Brothers. Yeah. You wanted to be like the Frog Brothers. There was a genuine scary scene in Salem's Light where the guy's trying to get in the window. And he's talking to her and that really scary. And then they did the homage to that in The Lost Boys. Where
he's hovering outside the window.
Yeah. We got to have Jason on to talk about The Lost Boys. He got so many great stories.
Is he cool talking about The Lost Boys? Because sometimes actors don't like to talk about their old movies.
You know, I think, so him and I went on some runs in Santa Monica, and literally from the minute I picked him up to the minute that we get to the trails to the minute I'm talking about The Lost Boys. And then to the minute I drop him off, I'm like, one more question. And it's like, I've literally just drilled him about The Lost Boys. I could tell you every story, every, instance, casting, how he got cast, everything about him. And when he met Kiefer for the first time, and, and their scene when he's on the motorcycle and they're kind of challenging each other. But that is one of those special movies that hit me at the right time, because, it's kind of like when you watch Goonies and you're the age of those kids, and it's like you're in that magic. And so I remember seeing that movie and being like, wow, like the Frog Brothers are older than I was at the time, but I was like, oh, wow, these kids can be in the action, man. They can be in the action and fight these vampires, and they had all the knowledge and they knew all the things. And I love that movie.
And then they murder Bill S. Preston Esquire.
They did. And how about the sax solo with the dude with the no shirt on and the?
Oh my God, that guy's the most amazing. Okay,
is that the lead singer of Danzig?
No matter how badass and cool you are only fighting for second place, because muscle dude with a padlock necklace, tight purple pants, and a saxophone, he already won at cool. He's already got the top slot locked down. The best any of us can hope for is that silver medal or that bronze medal. That's all we can shoot for, because gold is locked up.
Was he the lead singer of Danzig?
No, they had a band. That was a real band. He's the lead singer and saxophone player of a real band.
Dude, 80s. We should do like a montage of 80s sax solos. There's something about the 80s and sax. I mean, you remember Rob Lowe in St. Elmo's Fire? And he had literally a 10-minute sax solo in the middle of the fucking movie. And he's clearly not playing it.
I mean, I guess dudes with saxophones were cool in the 80s.
So thank you guys for hanging out with us. Please like and subscribe and ring that bell. And, we appreciate it. And thanks for hanging out with us. You going to say bye?
Bye.